Or, I did not. That's a vehement denial. Say he stole her money. Or, I did not say he stole her money. Completely different. Or, I did not say he stole her money. That was a rascal over there that did it. Or, I did not say he stole her money. You know, he's going to put it back. I mean, he's just borrowing it. Or, I did not say he stole her money. It was hers that the rascal stole. Or, I did not say he stole her money. It was a diamond ring the rascal got. Now, you see, we took 8 words in one sentence, made them say 8 entirely different things. And when you become a serious student of selling and learn what those voice inflections are and how you can handle them, it makes a dramatic difference. Charles Osgood says, compared to the spoken word, Charles Osgood says, compared to the spoken word, a picture is a pitiful thing indeed. Words move people. They move them emotionally. Now, if you can put the word and the picture together, now we're in business. Now, different prospects will object differently. For example, one prospect might stomp his foot in essence and say, that price is ridiculous. How many of you ever had somebody, really respond in a manner like that? Another one might say, well, it seems to me the price is a little high. You might have a good old boy down home type fella, and he might say, you folks kind of proud of that stuff you sell, ain't you? Now, they're all talking price, but you handle them in a totally different way. The one who says that price is ridiculous, you don't argue with him. You don't say, no, it's not either. You repeat what they said, but you do it this way. You lower your voice, you look them right in the eye, and simply say, the price is ridiculous? Now, that sounded so simple, but you'll have to hear that a number of times to get that inflection right. What I did at the very end, my voice was rising. And what that does is it physically moves the objection back to the prospect side of the table. You are now selling on offense instead of defense because the prospect now has to defend their statement instead of you justifying the price. Now, because everything is selling, ladies, let me go ahead and tell you this, that works infinitely better even at home. For example, let's say that you beat your husband home, and you've had really a tough day, and as he walks in, you greet him warmly, of course, and give him a big old smooch, you know, and then you back up about 3 steps, you look at him and a big old smile and say, honey, did you want to take me to Alamans or Farfallo's for dinner? He might say, I don't want to take you anywhere to dinner. You don't argue with him. You just simply repeat what he said. You don't want to take me to dinner, hon? It almost ain't fair. It really is not. Now, let's say that it's grass cutting time, and so you say to your 14-year-old, okay, son, it's time to cut the grass. I don't want to cut the grass. You don't argue with him. You repeat what he said. You lower your voice. You look him right in the eye and say, you don't want to cut the grass, son? I can absolutely guarantee, whether you want them to take their toys to the back room or cut the television set off or get the repair person to come out and repair the air conditioning on a brutally hot Friday night, I can tell you it works dramatically better. Now, let's look at it another way. Let's say that one prospect might say, well, you know, the price is a little bit high. Then we got a lot of different ways. For example, I call this the like it close. I simply say then, well, let me ask you, do you like it? And most things are, yeah, well, I like it. Well, Mr. Prospect, don't you believe that it's difficult to pay too much for something you really like? Well, they might say, well, you got a point, but yeah, I think you can pay too much for something you really like. But you've just crossed a little barrier. You now have got them thinking along these lines. And let me point this out. Sometimes when they object to the price, that's not the objection at all. So early on, you need to smoke it out. Is that the objection? And you do that simply by saying, well, let me ask you, if there were a way I could show you that the price not only is fair, but actually is more than fair, would you go ahead and take advantage of the offer that we're making to you this evening? Now, or this morning, or whatever. What you're really doing is trying to smoke out the advantage. You're trying to smoke out whether or not the price really is the, the objection they're raising. Now, let's say they say, well, yeah, the price is the problem that I'm having with it. Then what you do is, if there were a way I could show you how you can legitimately justify this price and take advantage of our offer, would you be willing to go ahead and start enjoying the benefits today? Now, if they say no, then what you need to do is to smoke out the real objection, because price really is not it. But if the answer is yes, then you simply ask the question, well, do you like the product? And most of the time, you're going to get an answer. Well, then the next question, don't you agree that it's difficult to pay too much for something you really like? Now, a lot of times that forces them to start that thought process, and you've just taken one step towards closing that sale. Then if they say yes, then you say, well, it's okay to do something nice for yourself. Now, if the answer is no, then you move into what we call the fear of loss clause. And you do that with simply making this statement. Wouldn't you agree that it's better to invest a little more than you had planned instead of less than you should? Now, here's the reason I ask you that question. If you invest a little more than you had planned, you're talking peanuts. If you invest less than you should, and the service or product you buy won't do the job you need it to do, then you literally have lost everything. Now, if the prospect says the price is still too high, then you move to what we call the how much too much clause. For example, for 15 years, I was in direct sales. I sold heavy-duty stainless steel cookware, and it carried a premium price for a very justifiable reason. And a lot of times the prospect would say, well, yeah, your product is too much. And I'd say, well, give me a figure. How much too much? And they'd say, well, $200 too much. Now, I would always write the $200 down. And then let me give you this little bit of data. I had a policeman take his .45 and shoot my little 8-inch frying pan from a distance of 12 feet, and had a documented statement notarized saying that he had done that, and you could just barely see the dent in that little pan. And so I had shown that to the prospects in the process of the demonstration, and I said, let me ask you, you say $200 too much. How long do you think this set of cookware is going to last you? And invariably they say, well, I think it'll last forever. Then I would say it certainly would last you at least 20 years, wouldn't it? And invariably they say, yeah, I don't think you'd have any trouble with that. Well, if you invest $200 too much over a 20-year stretch, what that amounts to is about $10 a year. And if you break that into pennies, it means really that for just 3 cents a day, you can go ahead and have the finest equipment that you can get anywhere at any price. Now, if the prospect still objects or still says, well, it's too high, then I would ask him this. I would say, now, let me ask you this question. Do you ever eat out? And invariably, they would say, oh, yeah, we frequently go out to dinner. Then I would simply say to them, well, let me ask you, do you tip the waitress? Invariably, they say, or waiter. They say, oh, yeah, we always tip. Well, this was a number of years ago, and so I would use a lower price. I would say, well, now, how much do you generally tip? And they would say, well, at least $1. Then I would say, well, now, let me tell you what you're giving $1 for. That is to have the food brought from the kitchen and put on the table. You brought the silverware and the china out. They served you water and coffee, but they served. Now, you give her $1 for doing that, or him $1 for doing that. Your wife went to the store. She bought the food. She brought it home. She carefully prepared it. She cooked the meal. She brought it to the table and served the meal. Then she's got to take it up and wash the dishes. Now, remember, this was many years ago before a lot of the ladies were working as they're doing today, and the husbands didn't give them much help at all in that kitchen. Most of them still don't give them very much help. Well, then I would simply say, if you would tip that serve person $1 for bringing the food from the kitchen to the table, don't you think your wife deserves at least 3 cents for doing all of those other things? I got to tell you, we got some pretty exciting results as a result of using that particular clothes. Now, if the prospect says, well, the price is still too high, then I would go to this one. Well, now, let me ask you, are you concerned about the cost, or is it the price that you're concerned about? And a lot of times they would say, well, what's the difference? Now, I would always use, and incidentally, the reason I moved to the board, and what I encourage you to do, anytime you see me use this board to illustrate a point, or use graphics to illustrate a point, that says to you that you need to be letting your prospect see you writing something when you're showing figures. And the reason is we've been conditioned to believe what we see and doubt what we hear. Now, if they see it and hear it, see it as logic, hear it as emotion, you put the two together and you got a better chance of making the sale. So the prospect says, well, what do you mean? Is it cost or price we're concerned about? Then I simply say, and here's the example I use because it happened in my life, I encourage you to get one out of your industry that specifically fits you. I say, well, now, when my son was 6 years old, we went down to the Swin bicycle place to get him a bicycle. They told us it was $64.95. Well, years ago, that was an enormous price to pay for a bicycle. Just to teach a 6-year-old how to ride, he's going to tear it up anyhow. So I went down to a discount store, and there I priced a bicycle for $34.95. Now, this price is obviously considerably less than that. And again, I'm showing them they're seeing it and hearing it. Now, it was a nice little bicycle. About 60 days later, we went back to that little bicycle store because we wanted to get the handlebars replaced. And they said, well, you know, it's in warranty and not going to cost you anything. Well, 30 days later, we had to go back and get more new handlebars, no longer a warranty, and so now the price is $4.50 higher, and at this point, we have got, let me see, $39.45 invested in that bicycle. Well, about 3 months later, the entire sprocket apparatus, the brakes and all of that, came completely kazip. We went back to the little bicycle store, and this time it came to roughly $15, and now we've got $54.45 invested in that bicycle. Well, about a month later, the bearings in the front wheel went kazip. We went back down to the little bicycle store, and they said it'd be about $5. I had forgotten. I threw in the towel at that point, and I said, no way. Then we went and bought the Swin bicycle for $64.95. My 6-year-old son rode that bicycle. He raised the handlebars, took the fenders off, and made a dirt bike after about 5 years out of it. He rode that bicycle regularly for the next 5 years, and periodically he rode it for 10 years. The only other expense we had, literally, were 2 tires for that bicycle. Now, let's look at what I've just said. The price of this one was considerably more than the cheaper bicycle. The cost of this bicycle right here, for 6 months, it cost us $54.45, or $9 per month for him to ride that bicycle. In 10 years, this bicycle cost $64.95, or the cost was $6.50 per year. Now, Mr. Prospect, let me ask you again. Is it price or is it cost you're concerned with? Now, the reason I stress that so strongly is simply this. A lot of people can beat us on price, but nobody can beat us on cost. And since price is a one-time thing and cost is a lifetime thing, don't you really want the best possible lowest cost that really is effective? Now, let's say you don't have time to do all of those things as far as dealing with price. Let's say you're at a counter somewhere and you've only got a few seconds to make the sale, and the prospect simply says, well, the price is a little high, and you just have that one moment. You look your prospect right in the eye, and you simply say to them, you know, Mr. Prospect, many years ago, our company made a very basic decision. We decided that it would be easier to explain price one time than it would be to apologize for quality forever. Now, I'll bet you're glad we made that decision, aren't you? I'm telling you, folks, I've sold a lot of merchandise with that particular close. It really does work. Let me emphasize a point. People do make emotional decisions. For example, we griped and complained when they started making us wear our seat belts in automobiles. I've never heard anybody gripe about wearing a seat belt in an airplane. And yet the truth is, if you have a wreck in a car with your seatbelt on, the odds are 3 to 1 that it's going to prevent more serious injury, perhaps even save your life. Now, on an airplane, 30,000 feet up, you got your seatbelt fastened, and that sucker comes down. I'm here to tell you that seatbelt's not going to do you any good at all. We do make emotional decisions. Now, again, if we can put emotional and logic together, we're going to be in business. Eb Jackson from Tucson, Arizona, is in the life insurance business, and he was telling me he used this very specific close to make the biggest sale of his career. And incidentally, he said he was kind of dragging bottom at that particular point. He called on this couple and made the presentation on the biggest contract he had ever offered. And the objection they brought up was simply the price is too high. And then Ab simply looked at them and lowered his voice and said, many, many years ago, our company made a very basic decision. They decided it would be easier to explain price one time than it would be to apologize for poor service for the rest of your life. I'm glad they made that decision, Mr. Prospect, and I'll bet you are too. Ab said it worked beautifully. Now, I'd like for you to please understand this. Every close won't work for everybody selling everything. Your experience, your judgment, and your common sense will be the determining factors. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Ziegler, why do we need to know so many closes anyhow? Well, let me give you a basic reason for that. Dr. Herb True did some research at Notre Dame University. He discovered that only 4% of all of the salespeople in America will ask for the order 5 or more times. Now, I want to emphasize something. They do not necessarily ask those 5 times in the same interview. There are many presentations where, in fact, you do not ask for the order simply because you're gaining information so that you can make a legitimate proposal to them. When you're talking thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, you don't walk in, make a presentation very many times, and walk out with a multi-million-dollar contract, though it does happen, especially if you expect it to happen. But what Dr. True discovered was simply this. Those who ask for the order over a period of time, sometimes in one sitting, more often in 2 or 3 sittings, at least 5 times, those 4% closed over 60% of all of the sales, meaning simply that they made over 60% of all of the income. You got to ask for the order. When I first got started in selling, one of the first things I was told was you close early, you close often, and you close late. How many of you have ever been told that, especially when you first got started in selling? Yeah. Well, the question comes up, how early is early? Let me emphasize this as strongly as I can emphasize it. You never ask for the order until you have given them some legitimate, logical reason for giving you a yes answer. If you've not given them value before you ask for the order, you come across as a high-pressure type salesperson. I want to get this over and move on to the next prospect. Now, that's one of the reasons you give that value first, because once the prospect has said no, a little barrier goes up. You can get over it, but it is more difficult than if the barrier had never been raised. So give value before you ask for the order. And that leads us into what I call, is that fair enough close? You do build that value before you ask for the decision. But let me simply say this. It's okay, it's even wise to let the prospect know in advance, maybe, that you're going to ask for the order. For example, years ago, things were slightly different than what they are today. When I was in the life insurance business, we used to do the fact-finding interview, and then we would go back with a proposal. And I would always have it in a beautiful folder. And when I went back, then I would take the proposal like so, and I would say, I have prepared a proposal for you.